Greeting and salutations. I am Lloyd, a producer at LCD Productions, and I have come to share this new series of visual audiobooks with you, the listener, the supporter, the viewer. Together we will go on a journey like never before, fly to new heights with Project Aerospace, explore new land and cityscapes with photations, even change the dimension of time through the power of time-lapse photography from live to tape. We'll even travel beyond the mind's eye into worlds captured and generated through animation from Thumbs United daily animation series. As we together go on these journeys filled with photography and theater of the mind, I hope you remember the core belief that we hold, that anyone can become the master of art, meaning that it is not some born skill what makes someone good at being creative. It is a desire to practice and spend time being creative that creates the master. I hope that these films, photography, and stories inspire you to set some time aside and practice some creativity. I believe if we all spend more time creating and being constructive, the world would be a better place, a more friendlier and fulfilling place. Thank you for coming. Let's begin this journey. This is Live to Tight in partnership with Project Aerospace to create the visual audiobook, The Girl Aviators and the Phantom Airship. Chapter 13. Juke's date appears. The aviation field at Atkinson a few days before the big contest of the juvenile aviators was alive with action and color. The spot selected was a flat, smooth field with some 50 acres on the outskirts of town. The grass spread a green carpet thickly sprinkled with flowers, while at one end the place was a row with greenish painted sheds known as hangars. Hangars is French for shed, Peggy had explained to a group of friends from Sandy Bay whom she was showing over the grounds, and I think that shed is a whole lot better word than hangar, which is the way you were supposed to pronounce it. One of the sheds has, in deference to Peggy, we shall call them, was a different color and stood somewhat apart from the rest. It was also much larger and bore in consequential-looking letters over its door the words, Harding Airplane Company, keep out. And to see that this notice was enforced to the letter, Fanning Harding had installed a red-nosed watchman with a formidable club at the portal. Considerable secrecy, in fact, had been observed concerning his aeroplane. Several large boxes had arrived one night and been hustled as quickly as possible into the shed. The shed assigned to Roy Prescott happened to be an odd coincidence to the next door of the Harding one. The second day of their stay at Atkinson, Roy, on coming down to the field from the hotel at which he and Peggy and Miss Prescott were stopping, was much surprised to be greeted by Fanning with some persuasiveness. After a lot of preliminary hemming and hawing, Fanning broached to Roy once more the proposition of selling the Golden Butterfly. But I thought you had a fine type of aeroplane of your own, said Roy, wondering at the renewal of Fanning's offer. So I have, was the rejoinder, but now that I have established my business on paying business basis, I can handle another type. You know, mine is a biplane model. Roy nodded. He had no liking for Fanning, but the other was so efficient that he felt it was incumbent on him to meet the other lad halfway, as the saying is. I'd like to have a look at your craft sometime, he said. Not much you won't, rejoined Fanning quickly. You'll see her on the day she wins the big prize, and not before. You seem to have it won already, rejoined Roy, rather contemptuously. Oh, yes, was the confident reply. I'm going to simply fly rings around you and the rest, so you better take up my offer now, for after the race your Golden Butterfly stock won't be worth a penny. I'm not so certain about that, was the answer. Then you won't take up my offer? I'll raise it another 200. Roy smiled and shook his head. Something in his refusal angered the other lad. Well, as you wish, he said, strolling off, but Dad has been pretty vehement with you up to date. As you won't meet us halfway, though, I'm going to advise him to force you to sell the Golden Butterfly. How? By foreclosing that mortgage without further delay? Fannin whipped the words out with a vicious intonation. All his mean nature surged up into his face as he spoke. Roy breathed a little quicker, but outwardly he was calm and cold as ice. "That's your privilege," he said shortly, turning away. But that night he and Peggy had a troubled discussion about ways and means, and it became more evident to them how much depended on winning the $5,000 prize. There were several aspirants in the juvenile class on the grounds, as well as flyers of more mature years, for Mr. Higgins had interested some other capitalists, and it had been decided to make quite an event out of the aerial meet. On the day before the race, which meant so much to them, Peggy and Roy decided to take a practice spin across country in their plane. The capable-looking machine excited the favorable comment when it was wheeled out of the shed. Several of the other competitors gathered about it while the engine was being tuned up. Among them was a surly-looking chap with a dark, roughly shaven chin and a pair of shifty eyes. He stood beside Fanny Harding, who was also in the crowd about the Golden Butterfly. The Sandy Bay boy gazed on with a sneering look while our two young aviators got everything in readiness. This took some time for everybody, and everybody was anxious to take a hand in the work, and it was quite a task to kindly, but steadfast reject these offers, well met as they were. At last everything appeared to be in good shape. With a buzz and a whir, the engines tried out, and it worked perfectly, and before the crowd had time to cheer, the airplane shot up from the ground in front of its shed with hardly any preliminary run. Then came a belated cheer. "That's the craft that wins the big prize," said a scout, good-natured-looking man. "Don't you be so certain," snapped out Fanny Harding, who stood close by, to whom the words were a gale. "Why, what's the matter with you, my young friend?" asked the jovial man. "You must be meaning to get it yourself." "That's right," was the confident reply. "Well, don't count your aerial chicks before they hatched," was the merry rejoinder. A laugh at Fanning's expense went up from the crowd. The boy flushed angrily and strode off in the direction of his hangar. Confound that young Jacobiness of Roy Prescott, he murmured as he went. "He gets ahead of me every time, but I'll fix him. Pop needs that land, and if Roy wins this race, the Prescotts can pay off that mortgage and be on the road to riches. Well, I guess I'll settle all that, but I'll have to act quickly." "You seem to be more sore on that Prescott boy," came a voice at his shoulder suddenly. Fanning turned quickly to find himself confronted by the unproposing individual who had stood at the side during the start of the Golden Butterfly, which was by this time almost out of sight in the eastward. What do you know about it?" he asked sharply. "Well," was the rejoinder, "being an observer sort of an individual, I figured out that you were not best pleased at seeing what a fine aeroplane that kid has. Right, ain't I?" He coolly looked from his pocket a disgusting-looking cigar stump and proceeded to light it, leering impudently into Fanning's face the while. Maybe you are, and then again, maybe not be," was the Sandy Bay youngster's cautious reply. "But how does it interest you?" Because I haven't any more use for him than you have, and if you make it worth my while, I'll give you a bit of information that will be of value to you." "What do you mean?" inquired Fanning, beginning to listen with more attention than he had hitherto shown. "Just this, that Jukes Dade, who used to work for Mr. Prescott years ago, but he discharged me for a little fault of drinking I had. Come now, don't you recognize me?" "By George, I do," exclaimed Fanning, "but it was so many years ago when you were with Mr. Prescott that I hardly knew you. You have changed greatly." "I may have," was the reply in bitter tones. "I've been through enough, but there's one thing I ain't never forgotten in all these years, and that is my resolve to get even on the old man Prescott. But he is dead, put in Fanning, wondering at the baleful expression he hated that had come into the man's face. All true enough. I heard that some time ago, but if I can injure the son in any way, I'd like to do it. I've got a wrong to avenge, and if you want to pay well to have Roy Prescott put out of the race tomorrow, I'm your man. Hush, don't talk so loud. Some folks over there are looking at us. Oh well, if you're afraid to. No, that isn't it. I must prevent Roy winning that race tomorrow at all hazards. Come into my hangar and we'll talk quietly. Ah, that's the talk, was the rejoinder, and Duke Dade chuckled with a grim delight. You want a little job of work done to settle your friend's hash? Well, you've come to the right shop when you meet up with old Duke Dade, who has an axe of his own to grind. That was chapter 13. The next chapter is chapter 14, A Girl Aviator's Adventure. Thank you for experiencing this journey we have created here at LCD Productions. For more information on how to support these films and projects, visit photations.com/support. Fine art photography prints from journeys around the world can be purchased from photationsstore.com. And digital downloads of our photography and visual audiobooks is available for personal use. Commercial use is available at a different rate. Thank you for your time. I hope to see you here again.